My name is John Nerrill. I help mid-career professionals who are feeling undervalued and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have. And when Leora was kind enough to ask me to spend some time with you this afternoon, what really kind of resonated when she and I had met previously was this whole idea about pitching and how for you in whatever stage you are in career transition, whether you are currently employed and you're looking to navigate an internal promotion, you may currently be an active job seeker and you are looking outside of your organization, or you are unemployed currently right now and looking. But there's something here about pitching that I wanted to come on and talk to you about today, because I have found, and I know, that there is a time and a place to pitch. And so when you think about that elevator pitch, I'm curious if you can, for me, just put in the chat what you have heard or what you have learned about an elevator pitch. So we're going to keep this interactive today. When you have questions that come up, please put them in the chat. If you see me not directly looking at my camera, it's because I'm either looking over here where the chat window is, or I'm looking at my notes on the side, and I've got some slides to share a little bit later, but I'm not going to kill you with death by PowerPoint. So in the chat, what do you think the purpose is of an elevator pitch? I live right outside of Washington, D.C. in Vienna, Virginia. And outside my window right now, it is pitch black with a storm. So we are going to keep fingers crossed and hope that the internet doesn't go out or anything like that. So we're just going to have some fun and roll with all of this today. So, the idea behind a pitch is it's short, it's quick, it's to the point, right? Include something memorable in the pitch, Brad. Thank you for that. Absolutely. You want to stand out when you're pitching, right? And if you really have that quintessential 15 to 30 seconds with somebody, you're pitching because you need something, right? So Leora, a memorable tagline, Simha, if I said your name correctly, leads to more conversation. We hope it does. We absolutely hope that it does lead to some more conversations. Well, today, I'm going to propose an alternative to you in something to think about just a little bit differently to help you stop pitching. It's what I call a unique professional value statement. And we are going to workshop that unique professional value statement a little bit later on today. So you're going to walk away with an artifact from our time together with something that you may absolutely decide to use the next time you are interviewing, you are networking, or you are finding a way to connect. Now, I firmly believe there's a time and a place to pitch. And I'm also a fan of the show Shark Tank. So if you've ever watched Shark Tank, you know that there are 5 potential investors who are all there to hear a budding entrepreneur's pitch about a certain product or service that they're selling that they want to scale on a much larger market. Personally, if I was ever on Shark Tank, I'd want to work with Mark or Lori. They're my 2 favorites. But what makes Shark Tank great television is that it's entertaining. In the scope of 90 seconds, you get to hear the entrepreneur's story. You sit there and you wait to see whether or not they're going to buy in. They're going to invest. If they actually get someone to agree with them that what they have is of interest to a shark and that they're going to buy in and invest. Makes for great TV. It doesn't always make for a great approach when we're networking or we're interviewing. So one of the most famous stories from Shark Tank is about Jamie Siminoff. He created the Ring video doorbell. At the time, back in 2014, it was known as Doorbot. And he came on the show and no shark invested in him. In fact, Mark Cuban even said to him, Jamie, I think you're probably going to make about 20 million. I'm really only interested in investing in someone that's going to make 70 million. Can you imagine hearing that? Right? So he went on to become one of the most famous, if not the most famous person to ever not get a deal on Shark Tank and be as successful as he is. And he's also the first person ever to be invited to be a shark on the show. They pitch, right? They pitch. And so what I want to offer you today is that pitching is all in the head. We're really cerebral when we're thinking about what we have to say, what we want to ask for. And yes, there are times when you're going to do that. But when we come from a place of value and service, it resonates more in the heart. We create a different type of tone or energy when we're presenting this unique professional value statement that allows people to be a little more interested in who we are and what we do, and also to generate that opportunity to keep the conversation going. This was something that took me a while to learn. So I had a 25-year career in education. I started those 25 years in Oakland, New Jersey, in Bergen County. I worked for the Oakland Public Schools. I started off as a middle school mathematics teacher. From there, I became the middle school mathematics coordinator, and then eventually the district coordinator, where I oversaw the mathematics instruction for 1,600 students. We had 3 elementary schools, 1 middle school. One of the things I loved about teaching mathematics was it was really great when a kid kind of had it all make sense, when they learned those problem-solving skills, when math got hard for them at some point and they figured out what they needed to do to understand the concepts a little bit more. I loved being in the classroom. But about 11 years into my time there, I was teaching a lesson to my 8th graders on multiplying fractions. It was a lesson I had done before. I knew it worked. It was a good lesson. The kids understood the concept. And admittedly, I was a little bit on autopilot that day. And I heard this voice come into my head and it said, "John, you can't do this for the rest of your life." And I thought, okay, we dismissed that real quickly because we don't really want to pay attention to it. And the next day I heard that voice again. And I wasn't preparing for a career transition. I wasn't thinking that I was ever going to leave. And all of a sudden, I was having this mid-career moment where I wanted to go do something more. And I wasn't really sure what more looked like. So over the course of the next 3 years, I ended up exploring different job opportunities. I considered leaving the classroom and going to corporate and leveraging a consulting relationship I had with Casio America at the time. I did not take that job. And ultimately, what I landed on was that I wanted to do more work with teachers. I wanted to help them be better at what they were doing. So in 2010, for both some personal reasons as well as professional, I ended up accepting a job with the District of Columbia Public Schools where I supervised 21 instructional coaches across 13 middle schools. I loved that job. That job was great. I knew I had an opportunity to have an impact. And what I also learned was that it was a very difficult organization to work in. I came home on some days happy that I saw some of the most amazing stuff, and other days I came home and cried. And I ended up leveraging what I had done there to take a job with the state superintendent. Now, even though DC is not a state, educationally, they structure it like a state education office. I went to go work for the state superintendent on their assessment team, and I oversaw the mathematics and science instruction and assessment for almost 80,000 students in our nation's capital. And one day, I watched my boss get fired. And if you've ever seen that happen, or God forbid that's ever happened to you, not fun. And when I saw that happen and I saw some things organizationally that were starting to change, I thought, well, probably time for me to make another career transition, not sure where. And my now ex-boss had gone to interview for an educational nonprofit, and she got offered the job. She didn't accept it. She called me up and she said, "You need to interview for this position." And she sent me the job description and I looked at it. If you've ever looked at job descriptions, you know how overwhelming they are, right? And I looked at that job position and I thought, there's no way I can do this job. I'm not qualified enough. And she said to me, okay, listen to me. Shut up and get out of your own way. Just go apply for the job. So I did. And after a couple of rounds of screenings, I got invited to a 4-hour interview that started off with a 1-hour test about how good my mathematics skills and assessment skills were. I didn't do too well on that. I went and met with the senior vice president. We didn't click. And so I had this moment during the 4 hours where I thought, I could leave. I should just go. And then I thought, well, there's something I'm meant to learn here. So how do I want to show up and do that? So I went into this interview with a woman who was the director of the mathematics team. And she asked me a question that I wasn't surprised by. I just wasn't sure how I was going to answer it. She asked me, why should we hire you? If you have ever been asked that question in an interview, could you type a yes for me in the chat, please? Why should we hire you? So, all right, we're seeing some yeses come in. All right, good. So here's what I did. I have learned throughout my years that I tend to diffuse situations with humor, and I went for the joke. And I looked at her and I said, well, I spent 14 years in a district in northern New Jersey. I spent 14 months working for the District of Columbia Public Schools. I've spent 14 months working for the state superintendent. I'd really appreciate it if I could make 15 somewhere. Will you just give me a job? And there was this awkward laugh that came from her. And when the awkward laugh settled, this is what I said. All joking aside, here's why you hire me. Pretty much think that I bombed that assessment. I know my skills are good and my content is great. So anything that I might have missed, you can train me and you can skill me up really quickly. And that's not going to take a lot of time. I said, but you're going to hire me because I can help you rebuild your team. I have experience building effective teams and rebuilding dysfunctional teams. And if that's a need, I'm your guy. And you're going to hire me because I'm also really, really good in front of the client. And so if you need to send me out on a meeting or send me out on a project and you decide to put me in front of a client, I am never going to do anything that's going to make me, you, or this organization look bad. I'm always going to put the organization first with the client right behind it. And if you have a need for someone like me who is capable of handling difficult conversations with people, because I have had them throughout my life and career and I don't shy away from them, if there's a need for you, that's why you hire me. And she took her notes and I went on to the next interview. And 2 days later, I got offered that job and I accepted it. And 3 months into that job, sitting in my beautiful exterior office overlooking Georgetown, she walks into my office on a Friday afternoon and closes the door. And I thought, oh boy, I'm getting fired. First thing she said to me when she walked in the door was, just breathe, you're not getting fired. I said, okay, good. She said, do you remember when I interviewed you? I said, yeah. She said, do you remember when I asked you, why should we hire you? Well, I'm going to tell you why we hired you. I can't handle the day-to-day operations of the team. I am overwhelmed by trying to take care of a team of 26 people. At the same time, do what I need to do, oversee multiple projects, sit in meetings with executive team. I can't do it. Will you help me? I'm a heart-centered leader and professional. When I hear, will you help me? My usual default answer is yes. I'm going to do whatever I can to help you. And so we worked out, defined what the roles were. I did ask if that was a promotion and more money, and she laughed at me and she said, "You've only been here for 3 months." No, but we'll consider that at the year. She got my value. And as I got to work with her more and more closely, I got to understand hers. It was really vulnerable for her to say to me, "I can't do my job the way it's currently structured, and we brought you on. Can you help me?" And that's where showing up from a place of value and service is grounded. Who do you help? When you think about that, and you think about wherever you are in your career, your unique professional value is grounded in who you help. So we're going to go ahead and start workshopping this unique professional value statement. And it begins with this, that first question: who is it that you help? Now, I'm going to share my screen with you, so you will have this as a graphic to work off of. But by all means, please feel free to open up a Word document, a sheet of paper, anything like that, that you can start working on this as well. So that question, who do you help? First and foremost, you can't help everyone. Be really, really nice, but you can't. When you think about your current role, or you think about the work that you've previously done, who are the people you have most closely connected with that directly benefited from your expertise? We are all good at something. In fact, I call it our genius. Our genius is that thing that we do better than anybody else. I have a very dear friend of mine who is a partner in a Big 8 accounting firm. She's one of the few female partners in tax. She is phenomenal at what she does. And when you talk to her, she's like, "I just help make tax understandable to people that don't get it." Thank you. So you have to think about, who are the people that you directly interact with every day? So if you would, go ahead and just kindly start putting that in the chat for me. Who are the people that you help? And we will work at getting that more specific. So that's part of workshopping this the way we're doing it, right? Because the more specific we can get with who you help, the better. So Brad, operational leaders, go a little bit more with that for me. So specifically, can you be more specific with operational leaders, treasurers, CFOs? Okay. Dorothy. Michael, I help people nervous through financial transitions and who are stressed about personal financial decisions. Michael, I'm going to ask you to clarify people here. So are we talking about, are you niched specifically, let's say, with people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s? I personally identify with mid-career with the people I help. Is it something there? Do you work with people where they have a certain portfolio, right? Like maybe only work with people who have 250K in assets. Is it something like that? Mila, CEO, leadership team, department heads, direct reports. Okay, that's a lot. So let's see, is there a way we can kind of put that all under an umbrella? Andrew, same thing. Entrepreneurs, founders, CFOs, same thing. Is there a way we can kind of pull all that together? All right. So think of that term that's going to accurately reflect who are the people you help. Sharon, I help finance and operational teams understand how their roles and support the broader organization. Good start. Leora, COOs, global high net worth clients, internal and external stakeholders. Okay. Business leaders. Andrew, specifically what kind of business leaders, right? So these are all good. You're doing a great job with this, right? So when we think about who it is you help, the more specific you can be, the better. The reason why we want to be more specific here is it creates a message that's very clean and clear. The cleaner or clearer you can be makes it easier for the recipient to absorb what it is that you're saying. It's why I never tell people I am a coach. The reason I don't actually comes from that SVP at the last place where I worked. He taught me a couple really valuable lessons. This was one of them. I was growing my practice part-time, and so I needed to complete an outside working agreement. When I told him that I was going to be opening a coaching practice, he asked my vice president, who I was directly reporting to at the time, if it was for basketball. I'm 5'8" and shrinking. Like, no, I don't play basketball. There's a bowling pin over there because I do bowl professionally on the regional tour. But I was like, basketball, what is he thinking? And I thought, oh, that's because I wasn't clear with him. So then I went through a phase where I would say executive and career transition coaching. And as you heard me say in the beginning, I help mid-career professionals who feel undervalued and underutilized. So there can be a few adjectives in there to help describe exactly who it is that you help. So for example, somebody might say, I help companies increase revenue, but I don't know what companies you're talking about. So we might get more specific by saying, I help small businesses with less than 50 employees increase revenue, right? Michael, age agnostic. Thank you for clarifying that. Retirees, inherited wealth, business owners, those who become philanthropic. Much more specific. Thank you for that. Allison, executive directors with board reporting and onboarding. Okay, Allison, you do a lot. Okay, hats off. But can we narrow that down? Because if you were to share that with somebody you don't know, that's going to take a little bit more time than what we ideally want. Right? So how can we do that? Right? So as you start thinking about would not know how to narrow it when I know wouldn't I know how to narrow it when I know my audience? Okay, thank you for that. So yes, that would be a little bit clearer, but when you're networking or interviewing, or you're just connecting in general, there is an ideal target community you're going after. That ideal community is based on people with whom you can be a great resource for, and they can be one for you as well. So depending on what your need is, the more finely tuned you can be to that specific audience, the better off you're going to be. Think of it like a filter that you're putting in place in terms of how you're connecting. So one of the easiest examples is when you're looking for a new job, it's very easy to put a compensation filter in there. I'm not going to accept a job for less than $125,000. Or I'm not going to entertain interviewing for a company unless with compensation and bonus, it's going to bring in at 175 or 100, whatever that number is. It's an arbitrary number at this point, but we put that filter in because that just weeds out the people who might be a good connection for us or who might not be. So as you keep thinking about that, start thinking about, okay, and this is for everybody, start thinking about who are those people that you help, because the answer to the next question is going to be key. What do you help them do specifically? So there is something that you do better than anybody else, and I am giving you permission to brag here. This is something that is particularly difficult for my clients because as heart-centered leaders and professionals, they tend to talk in the collective. We did this. Our team succeeded because. And we have to shift that narrative differently because it's got to be about about an I rather, excuse me. So it's that I statement. Here's who I help. So think about this. I'm not great at Excel. Okay. I use it in a very pedestrian way to do what I need to do. If you ask me to do a pivot table, I'm going to fail at it miserably. If any of you can do a pivot table and you know how to do it really well, like bows and applause, because that is something I can't do. Same boss that hired me, that asked me to take over her team, was very adamant that I know how to do pivot tables for all the work that we had to do. And I looked at her one day and I said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. She said, excuse me. And I said, I've tried. I've gone through the training. I've done the tutorial. I have even practiced on YouTube and watched YouTube videos and practiced as much as I could. I'm not good at it. It's actually a waste of my time for you to pay me to sit in my office for an hour to try to figure out this pivot table when we have 7 younger professionals on the team that do it all day long, that I could ask any one of them, and within 5 minutes or less, they're going to turn around and give it to me because they're really good at it. I'm not. What you need me to do is help you with the team and help having development conversations and performance conversations and promotional conversations. I'm not your Excel person. And that was a hard conversation for us because the culture before I had gotten there was that everybody had to do everything. When we work in places or we have a mindset that we have to be good at everything, we never get to lean into that thing that we're really good at, that we're honestly better than everybody else. When I was teaching math, I always wanted to teach the kids that struggled with math because I knew there was a way to help them understand it better than they'd ever done before. There's something you do. I want to know what it is that you do better than anybody else. And Mila, to your point, thank you for posting that in the chat. It is hard to brag about ourselves, depending on how you were raised, who raised you, your cultural implications and impacts that have been given to you, be it culturally, through religion, experiences, whatever that is. It's hard. It's hard to brag about ourselves. But we want to shift the lens of that because you're going to do it because you're trying to help someone. When we started this meeting today and Leora asked you to put in the chat if you knew of a job posting for someone or to share how you could help someone, givers get. So when we show up from this place of value and service, I'm not trying to tell you how great I am. All I'm asking you is, hey, I'm really good at this. How can I help you? So think about it this way. This is your secret sauce. Your genius, or what you're going to help them do, is that thing that makes you stand out from everyone else. And it's what's going to position you strategically in the marketplace. Because the more you connect, the more you network, the more you talk to people, and you ask them, tell me a little bit about what you do. And they reciprocate and say, tell me a little bit about what you do. There's short-term and longer-term networking opportunities. If you're an active job seeker and you're working in a toxic environment or you're currently unemployed, there's an urgency about finding a job right now. And so you may be looking at more short-term networking opportunities to see who's going to help put your resume in front of somebody or who's going to help you have a different conversation that might lead to a potential job opportunity. But if you're in it a little bit longer, that longer game, just think about all the people that are going to get to know you and know what you're known for, and that professional brand that you're putting out there, that when they say, oh, I need to talk to Brian because Brian helps increase revenue and sets product strategy for financial tech solutions serving buy-side firms. That's going to stick in their head. So if we go back to this example of I help small businesses with less than 50 people, okay, how do you help them? Maybe it's something like, I help small businesses with less than 50 people increase their revenue and cut costs by examining current internal processes and data to determine more efficiency that'll save your company money. If I heard that, I'd be interested. I'd want to know a little bit more about that, especially if I was needing something like that. See, any job posting that's out there is all based on a need. When you look at that job posting, you're looking to see how well you can solve their problems that they've outlined in that job posting. Look at the verbs: manage, lead, coordinate, distribute, analyze. Whatever those verbs are that you see over and over and over again, is that part of your value? Is that part of your unique professional value that you can weave into this that's going to resonate with somebody? What is it that you do better than anybody else? So the way we start putting this together is, here's who I help and here's what I help them do specifically. But there's an underlying component to this, and it's not something we always share right off the bat. But it answers this question of, why is the work important to you? I'm not telling you anything new here when I say we spend a lot of time at work. We spend a lot of time away from our spouse, our families, doing other things we might actually like doing a little bit more, which is why sometimes we play the Powerball and sit there and hope with fingers and toes crossed that we're going to win a few $100 million. But there's a reason why you do what you do. That drives you. That driver, it's either a person, place, or circumstance that happened to you that you're like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's what makes who you help and what you help them do specifically all come together. I shared with you earlier my unique professional value statement. I shared with you, I help mid-career professionals who are feeling undervalued and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have using my proven 4-step formula. What I didn't tell you was why. See, if we were having a networking conversation, you're like, tell me more. I would share with you that every time I've made a career transition, it was exactly for those reasons. I felt undervalued and underutilized. I knew I was capable of doing more. I had leveled up my skills and I was ready to take that next step. And in the last place where I worked, when I wanted to bring in an internal coaching program, an executive leadership saw it differently, and I absolutely respect their decision. I didn't land very well in the second reorg. And I had a conversation with my boss one day. It was very clear. I wanted to know from her what my career path was going to be there. And she confirmed for me that it was at best horizontal. So when I walked into her office a few weeks later and resigned, I resigned with a lot of gratitude, because I had an opportunity to serve more people outside that organization than I could in. And I've never looked back from that decision. I've never regretted that decision to do what I get to do full time and have opportunities to come into your space and talk with you about this very thing because I feel so strongly about it. This is how we connect at a whole different level. See, creating the unique professional value statement as you're continuing to work on this, this is about letting people into your story. We hear a lot about how we have to control the narrative. We're going to control the narrative when the narrative isn't working in our favor. But when we have an opportunity to let someone into our story, who we help, what we help them do specifically, we're building a relationship that is grounded in getting someone interested in who we are and what we do. We're all interesting people. But if I get you interested in me, we're going to have a different kind of conversation. The way we do that is coming from this place of value because you're sharing how you're going to help them solve their problem. Even if you're on this call today and you love where you're at, you love your company, you love the job, you love what you're doing, there is still an opportunity for you to go deeper with this and get clearer and cleaner about the value you're providing. So when we look at all three of these circles, because here's the math geek in me with the Venn diagram, that star, the intersection of all those three circles, that is your unique professional value statement. What you are going to share with someone initially are the answers to those first two questions, who you help and what you help them do specifically. And I would love for you to start putting those answers in the chat so we can open up the mics or we can just share and just have an open Q&A. But the underlying part behind all of it is, why is that work important to you? That is what drives you to do the work that you're doing. That is what leads to fit. The fit where you and the company align, not 100%, but pretty close. Because for right now, that's the best fit for you professionally in what you're doing. All right. So Leora, I'm not sure, like, what typically do you do in these meetings? Is it open for people to turn their mics on and ask questions? Do you prefer that they're in the chat? What works best?
Absolutely. Anyone can ask a question. If they are too shy to reveal that they're the ones asking the question, they could put it for me in the chat, preceding it with the word question in all caps, and I'll ask it for them.
Okay, great.
So if they have a question and they're muted, they can also just say that I have a question in the chat, and I'll unmute them and call on them. So does anyone have any questions right now for John?
And feel free to ask me, be it a question about this. If you have a question about the difference between a pitch or the unique professional value statement, if you have a question about how you're networking or how you're interviewing right now and where this unique professional value statement can come into play, happy to answer.
Even if you have a unique question that came up in an interview, this is an opportunity to ask John what would be the best way to answer it.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
All right, John. Is there an ideal length that these unique value statements should be? You know, is it a one-sentence thing? Can it be a paragraph? You know, obviously you're speaking it, not writing it, but just conceptually.
So Brad, thank you for that question. So in a networking situation, typically it's going to take you between 20 to 30 seconds, right? You can go a little bit longer, but I wouldn't go longer than 45 seconds in that. If you're in an interview and to start off the interview, they say, tell me about yourself, don't go longer than a minute. And in that case, when you're answering that tell me about yourself question, I often coach my clients on putting something in personal about themselves that's going to make them memorable. So for example, my thing was always, I I'm a huge game show fanatic, and I'm a professional bowler who won a title on the PBA regional tour. Right. So I was pretty much guaranteed the fact that nobody was coming in that was a professional bowler and a game show nut. So if anything, I was memorable. I got to stand out in that regard. So in an interview, no longer than a minute. When you're networking, shoot for 30 seconds.
Great.
A follow up to that, Brad, or is that okay?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Jamie has a question as well.
Okay, Jamie.
Go ahead.
Hi, how are you? So I've been working with somebody who in your, elevator pitch statement has components 1 and 2, which is who you help and how you help them. I haven't tried to incorporate why. Is that just, is it something where you're, obviously makes it a little bit longer, but you're just gonna try to tack something on quickly to show them your enthusiasm for the role? Is that the idea?
Hold the answer to the last question back, right? So if you think about those timeframes, right? 30 seconds when you're networking, that answer to that third question is going to come out in everything else that you're saying as you get to connect and go with them. So you just want to keep it relatively short. The difference between the pitch and the value statement is that a pitch is based on need and it's based on what you want, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want something when I'm pitching. When we're sharing our unique professional value statement, it's really from that place of, how can I help you? How can I serve in some capacity? So the answer to that third question will just come out as the conversation unfolds.
Okay. Makes sense. Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'm going to ask Jeff Garfinkel to unmute. He has a question as well.
Hi, Jeff.
And Jamie,
Hi. How are you? I just have a kind of a general question. I just decided to start looking like 20 minutes ago. And I'm just wondering, how do I start? I've been working for 9 years at the same place. And before that, I was working 9 years from another place. Went from that one to this one. So it's been 18 years since I've really looked for a job. And I barely have a resume. So, obviously resume is first, but what would your advice to be? I was looking for the old FANG meetings to try and get back to them and do it. But in general, what would your advice be?
So what's your specialty or area of expertise?
I'm in controller, finance, and grants.
Who needs you?
Regular, any kind of small business company is what I work with. Small business owners.
Okay. Is there a particular small business, a type of small business owner or a small business in general that you could see yourself enjoying working for?
That's a good question. I don't know.
So the reason I asked that, and when we think about fit, let's just say, for example, if, and this is something that actually has come up in my work, but if you are abhorred by smoking or the tobacco industry in general, you're not going to go to work for a tobacco company. You're just not. It's just not something you're going to be able to get behind. So as you continue to explore, and when I talk about building a mid-career GPS, like this just falls in line with that whole prep phase. When we're preparing here, we're really kind of thinking about who needs me? Where are my services most needed? Where would I want to see myself going to work? And where do I feel like I can help that organization, that small company, that leader, that business owner the most? So as you start narrowing all that down, what I would offer to you is start looking at some job postings just to start getting an idea. As you're reading through them, what piques your interest? What do you sit there and go, nope, not going to do that job, not going to work for that company? Start looking and just researching and exploring, because when you go to write that resume, it will give you a much clearer perspective on the kinds of things you want to be in the resume when you're trying to clear that applicant tracking system, or you're going to email it to somebody and they're going to sit there and go, oh, I have such a clear idea about what it is that you do. If it's in your budget, I would highly recommend getting your resume professionally written. One, if you're not a professional resume writer, it's going to save you a ton of time, right? It'll just save you a ton of time and be a worthwhile investment for a few $100s to get that resume written. And then you can I always say, like, once you get the professionally written resume, you can then go and play. You feel more confident and competent about submitting that resume, sending it to somebody, because you believe it is an accurate representation of who you are and what you do.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Any follow-up questions on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jeff, if you have more questions.
The only thing is, I guess I have to figure out like where I want to be. I've tried some things that I liked, and it turned out to be the same old corporate kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So it's I just have to look and kind of take a look at what's going on around me.
The other option, or the other thing to consider doing, is have some informational interviews. Find people in your network or people who are doing work that you might be interested in doing. Schedule 15 minutes with them. 15-minute conversation with 3 structured and very targeted questions can be very helpful for you to narrow down exactly what you may or may not want to do. And usually people are very happy and willing to give 15 minutes of their time. And as a thank you, endorse them for some skills on LinkedIn that they've talked about in terms of what they did, or even just offer to send them a $5 gift card for coffee as a thank you for their time. They'll be overwhelmed, completely thankful and gracious. And it's a nice gesture on your part.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Any other questions for anyone?
I have one, Leora.
Go ahead, Eileen.
So John, I was intrigued by your suggestion of having an informational interview with someone, because the reason it intrigued me is I think personally that networking, quote unquote, where you're pitching, quote unquote, has given networking a bad name. And I guess the question I have to you is, shouldn't all of our outreach to our network or people, maybe second tier or third tier, be informational rather than do you have a job for me, which is why a lot of people don't take networking calls?
I'm a firm believer that networking is an opportunity for us to get really curious about how we can help somebody. So personally, for me, it is a huge turnoff when somebody solicits or propositions me on LinkedIn, and I get about 7 to 10 of them a day, where they will just say to me, "Hey, do you want more clients?" What do you mean by that? Do you want to have a 7-figure business? Yeah, but it's not going to happen in 30 days, right? So whenever I approach a networking conversation, I want to know about the other person. I want to know what they do, where they work, and I want to listen really carefully as we're talking to see who I can connect them to, how I can help them in some way. Because if I do that, I'm memorable, right? And I also believe it comes back tenfold. And if I'm of value to somebody else, they're going to be of value to me, either short-term or long-term. Where this changes, Eileen, in regards to your question, is in how we set all of this up. So if I want to have an informational interview with you, I'm going to be really specific about that. Hi, I'm really fascinated by what it is that you do. Would you be willing to hop on a call with me for 15 minutes So I could ask you 3 questions about the work you do. I'm currently in some career transition, and I'm going through this process of having some informational interviews just so I can ask these questions to help me narrow down what I want to do next. Would you be willing to have that conversation with me? It's just framed a little bit differently, as opposed to, hey, let's just spend some time getting to know each other and see how we can help each other.
Well, what interests me, and I'm passionate about this, is that neither scenario or framing is transactional. It's really taking the first steps to building a relationship.
Yeah.
And not just until you get the job or make the career change or get the information. And from what I've seen, that's the biggest mistake people make in their so-called networking. So yes, I'm reaching a little bit.
And thank you for that. And I will tell you and everybody, that was a big mistake I've made earlier on in my career, where it was just, how can you help me? I need this. And I had so many people say to me, stop, you're coming across as being needy and graspy, and no one likes that. Somebody said to me, you wouldn't walk up to somebody you were interested in dating and say, will you marry me? You just wouldn't do it, right? It's creepy. Nobody likes creepy. So why would we be creepy when we're networking? We've got to slow it all down and pull it back and spend time getting to know somebody, right? I have a wonderful colleague of mine. We're in the local chamber of commerce, and we talk all the time about how there are networking connections that provide immediate return. When somebody says to you, who can you connect me to? And they're like, I know 3 people. I'm going to connect you to Jamie. I'm going to connect you to Eileen. I'm going to connect you to Brad, right? And they boom, boom, boom. And here's the emails and the links, and they go right on ahead and do that. And there's other people where they're like, let me think about that. Thinking about that is not a rejection. Sometimes people really do need to think about who's a good connection because it's representative of their brand. So sometimes it just takes a little bit longer. When we come across as being needy or graspy, we often don't get the results. So take the time to slow down and really get to know somebody. That's where your value statement will help.
Great. Any follow-up on that, Eileen?
No, very helpful.
Good.
Especially since he kind of agreed with me and expanded on what I was saying in a proactive way. Thank you.
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you, Eileen.
Any other questions? Also, maybe, John, if you don't mind, someone could practice your pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to run their unique professional value statement and give you some feedback on that.
Actually, John, I have a question.
Sure.
So you were mentioning, Eileen, that you were talking about being needy. The idea behind networking is that you're often talking to people that don't necessarily know you very well. And so the easiest way for them to understand how they can help you is if you tell them, this is the area that I need help in, or this is why I'm talking to you, or something to that effect. That's not necessarily coming across as needy, is it, insofar as being informative. I guess it's all a question of tone or approach in those cases, because if you don't tell somebody, hey, you're this person in this industry, and this is what I'm trying to do, and this is why I need your help, how can they stay focused on specifically how can they help you?
So when do you think it's appropriate to communicate that?
Usually when somebody says, how can I help you?
Then it's fine.
Okay.
If you're leading with that, right? If somebody says, if you and I were to hop on a call, like a networking call, we didn't know each other before this, and we hopped on a call and I said to you, tell me about yourself. And you said, I need a job, or I need this. you and I are going to have a very different conversation, because I know that you're approaching this conversation from you want something. And you're not necessarily looking to build a relationship with me, because you do want it to be, it's sensing, this may not be your intention, but it can come across as being very transactional.
Well, then that's really not networking then, is it? Because that, the whole purpose of networking is that you're supposed to have a give and take, right? You're supposed to offer something as well as hopefully receive something of utility from both parties. So I would agree that if you talk to somebody and say, oh, by the way, I need a job, you're violating the first rule of trying to build a relationship. So from that perspective, I would agree with you. But I don't think it's a bad idea to let the person know if they how they can help you, if that's the reason for the
And
call.
you and I are on the same page with that, right? There absolutely is a time and a place where, typically, like when I'm wrapping up a networking conversation and I'll say to somebody, how can I help you? And when they tell me, and then they'll say to me, how can I help you? I have a very specific ask for them, right? If there is something if I'm looking for an introduction or a connection in a certain area, I will absolutely communicate at that time, because we've spent the last 20 to 25 minutes getting to know each other a little bit, right? Here's another one though. So, right. So I really appreciate you bringing this up. We talk about relationship building and stuff. Early on in the pandemic, about 5 months in, I hopped on a networking call with someone and kind of making the small talk and everything. I said, how are you today? And he unleashed about COVID. COVID is nothing more than a bad cold. I don't know why people are getting up in arms about it. It's ruining my life, blah, 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 the whole bit. What do you think? Great way to start a networking call, right? So the New Jersey in me came out a little bit. And I looked into the camera and I said, that's very interesting. I had a very dear friend of mine die from COVID unexpectedly back at the end of March. And I don't really adhere to your belief that it's just a bad cold. So for the purpose of this call, how can I be a worthwhile networking connection to you? And the color just went out of his face. We had the call. He followed up with me a month later. He said to me, would you like to get on another call? I said, respectfully, no. Just there was no relationship building there. We don't start off relationship building with hot button issues because we don't know how other people are going to feel about it. We have to take the time to just get to know. When we get to know, to your point, it's absolutely appropriate to say what you need. If you don't have a clear ask, I'm looking for a job with this company. I need a contact to this person. Who in your network is great to connect me to because I'm looking for this? Absolutely ask for it. But if you can, always make sure you're asking them first how you can help them. So thank you for that.
No problem. So the other, I guess, next question is, I'm not exactly sure what the nuanced difference is between an elevator pitch and the approach you're suggesting here, because they sound very similar in their approach. Is there a component of what you're proposing that is much different than what a typical elevator pitch might be?
Yeah, we were going to get there. So thank you for that transition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. So here's the differences, right? I'll just click all through these, right? So a pitch is quick and it's to the point, right? It answers who you are, what do you do, what do you want? Okay. That's the key thing. A pitch is all about what do you want? The unique professional value statement is really from this place of value and service about how can you help? So think about it in those terms and the mindset you're giving to that conversation. Right? Now, I had somebody one time say to me, aren't they both? And I was like, well, you could use both in the same conversation. Because as you're talking to people and you're explaining what it is that you do, you could, to your point, pitch at the end when they say, what do you need? I'm great. Here's my pitch. Here's my question. I need a connection to this person. Right. So there are some subtle nuances, but it's really in how you're approaching to it. To my point earlier, the pitch is very much in the brain. The unique professional value statement is very much in the heart, because we come from that place of value and service in terms of who we can help, right? So they're both going to answer that tell me about yourself question. It's just the difference is the energy that happens as you show up. That's all.
Hey,
Yeah. So if anybody wants, I know that I'm going to make the slides available, but if you do want to take a screenshot of this, feel free to take a screenshot of that now.
any other questions? Don't be shy. And again, if anybody wants to practice their pitch, just let us know that you'd like to go ahead and your pitch, your added value statement.
Yeah.
Go right ahead. Okay, we have a question here. John, this has been very interesting, enlightening, and entertaining, very sincere. Thanks for you taking the time to provide us this.
Okay.
Any
Thank
other
you, Allison.
questions?
Thanks for that.
Yes, thanks, Allison.
Yeah.
Any other questions? And someone who is not shy to practice their pitch, their value added statement to show the value that you bring.
So while we're just waiting, oops, let me just go back to I've just got a couple other screen shares here. And then if anybody does want to practice or whatever, we can certainly do that. We've talked so much about networking today. I just want to kind of pull this into, for anybody who is actively job seeking and interviewing right now, just a few things where the unique professional value statement will help. So first and foremost, if you're interviewing, make sure you know the process in terms of what stage in the interview process are you? Is this an initial call with a recruiter? Are you actually talking to somebody within HR, the specific hiring manager? Are you going to be going through an interview panel, a search committee, whatever that might be? Know that process and get really good at communicating your value right from the start. Whether it be that answer to the tell me about yourself question, some companies are not doing that initially. They're going a little bit of a more, let's just jump right into the interview and cut the small talk kind of a thing. There are always opportunities for you to communicate your value in an interview. And when you do it, you want to make sure that you're using words that are definitive about how confident you are in that value. One particular example to pay attention to is the difference between I think versus I know. The difference between those two verbs are very clear in terms of tone, and a good hiring manager is going to pick up on how and when you use them. So the easiest thing to remember here is if you are asked a question about your expertise, something in your experience that you have done, I know, in my experience, I've seen, I've done, I've leveraged, utilized, managed, led. We don't want to start off an answer to a question like that with, well, I think I'm really good at managing talent. In a situation like that, think breeds doubt. And so when you're asked to talk about your expertise, make sure the verbs that you use clearly and cleanly communicate your specific value and how confident and competent you are in that. It's all interviews, just like networking, are about building the relationship, except there's an outcome at the end. There's either going to be an offer for that position or not. So as you're building the relationship, find ways to generate interest in your candidacy. Be memorable, be clear, when you're asked a question in an interview, don't go over 2 minutes. You're going to lose the attention span of that hiring manager, right? And then obviously the last piece is how to close. So there's a lot of mind drama that happens after the interview. And one of the purposes of my work is to try to help as many people eliminate the mind drama after an interview. So here's how we do that. Let's say you're wrapping up the interview and they communicate next steps to you. And so they'll say something like, thanks for coming in today, or thanks for meeting us on Zoom today. We expect to make a decision by a week from this Friday, and we'll let you know where you are in the process. Now, typically, a lot of people will just go, oh, thanks for telling me. I really appreciate that. Here's where you're going to build a relationship one step further. What I'm going to offer you is to say something like this. Thanks so much for communicating your timeline to me. I know that things can get busy and sometimes things can delay your decision making. If by any chance I don't hear from you from a week from this Friday, would it be okay with you if I directly email you the following Monday or call you the following Monday just to see where I'm at in the process? One of two things is going to happen. Either one, they're going to say to you, absolutely, please do that. People get busy. Sometimes timelines change. You're just helping them out in the process. And without being overly enthusiastic about it, you're letting them know you're still interested. The second thing might be, they might say, no, we're really good on our timeline. We'll make sure to let you know. You may walk away from at that point going, okay, either one, they don't want me following up, or two, I'm probably not going to get the job. So much mind drama happens when we don't close the interview cleanly with agreed upon next steps. Because if you don't do something like that and you don't hear from them by a week from Friday, you're going to spend the entire weekend worrying whether you got the job or not. And then if you don't hear on Monday, you're going to tell everybody about it, how you didn't hear from them. You have an opportunity to build a relationship or an equal partner in this as well. So think about how to close that accordingly in that. All right. Any other questions?
Something that you brought up earlier is something that was very hard to change the mindset, because we have to show all the time at work that we're team players. So it's very hard to answer a question by saying, I did,
Yes.
I performed, I led, because we were always trained to that you are a part of a team and to say the team. And that was a very hard habit to break.
Well, yes, thank you for that. And yes, it is. I have struggled with that myself as well, right? We don't want to come across as being a braggart, being boastful. We're afraid of being perceived as being obnoxious or difficult, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just in how we message that, how we phrase that and stuff. So, if anybody is having that kind of problem and struggling with it, practice how you start using those I statements. Get 10 really good verbs that you can put after the word I and use that to help you formulate your response. Practice in front of a mirror, practice in your car when nobody's there, practice with somebody, record voice notes into your device, anything like that. It's all good.
So any suggestions what to put in the thank you letter afterwards, something that would make you stand out and unique?
Yeah, so let's not overlook the importance of thank you letters, thank you emails. So the first thing is time. In a best case scenario, you are sending that email at the end of the day. All right. And here's what you're gonna offer them. First and foremost, you're gonna thank everybody whom you interviewed with. You are going to share something that you found particularly interesting during the conversation, something that stood out for you, impressed you, was memorable for you. And then you're going to close that thank you letter with so especially if you forgot to include something in your interview, expand on that. By the way, I forgot to mention, or when we were talking about this, I just wanted to share that and add that thing in. And then lastly, end it with, I really appreciate our time today. I'm looking forward to helping you blank. What was the key thing in that interview that you heard from them was a particular problem, and helping them with that? The reason why you want to do that, at a recent case, a couple of months ago, I was working with someone who was a finalist for a position for an internal promotion. It was him and 2 other people. He got the job. He called me up. He was so excited. He said, "John, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I didn't feel like doing your stuff." He's like, "But I thought, well, all right, what do I got to lose?" Says, so it came time to close the interview, and they said, "What else do you want to tell us?" He said, and I shared with them how very specifically I could help them, and I used that verb a couple of times. He goes, "They called and offered me the job. And one of the things they said to me was, aside from your outstanding record and how talented you are, the deciding factor for all of us were you were the only candidate who shared how you could help us." So something to think about in that.
That added value statement.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Michael has a question.
Yes, Michael, go ahead.
So, so I've had a roughly 25-year career in financial services, and which included private banking, business banking, as well as most recently working at a hedge fund for 3 years, mostly in business development, relationship management, account management type thing. And I'm now transitioning slightly to more of a consulting type role, where I've spoken to family offices, a couple of CPAs, attorneys, etc., on helping them or their clients with the type of things I mentioned earlier, where there are people who have, whether it's liquidity events, whether it's family turmoil, transition, etc.
Okay.
So as I have these discussions, and I was actually at a fairly large networking event last night, I feel I'm okay at the pitch, which I'd prefer not to go into because I don't want to take everyone's bandwidth here. But as I transition, the person I meet with may not know me. They may not have ever worked with me. So you walk a fine line between confidence, showing expertise, showing competence, and also sounding like you're full of it. Because nobody knows me. Like, the fact of the matter is, anyone I've worked with will say, yeah, Michael really knows his stuff. He cares more than anybody. And he's accessible 24/7 for whatever comes up. But the reality is I can't say that, because I'm not concerned about coming across too arrogant, because I am confident in what I do. But at the same time, there's a fine line there, right? So as I transition, what are some of the things that you think I should A, focus on, and B, avoid? As far as communicating that value proposition that I'm giving to somebody.
As you get to know your clients, the people whom you're working with, just listen to what they need, listen to what their troubles or challenges, their specifics are. Let that be your guide. Yeah. Did you want to say something?
No, I'm sorry. So I'm actually talking, John, you and I meet at a restaurant through a mutual friend. We shake hands.
Yeah.
And you say, so, what are you doing? What are you up to? I heard you're in a transition. Mm-hmm. And I give them that spiel. So listen, once I have a client, I know I'm good.
Okay.
Once
I'm sorry. Okay.
It's a very warm handoff, I know it's very good. If it's somebody cold, I know nobody on this call right now or the Zoom. If I met you in public, you don't know me from anybody. Mm-hmm. I kind of come across, and I know this, I'm pretty self-aware, you come across as a business development guy. And, for those on this call who are finance pros or whatever else, usually the Excel types and the PowerPoint types, they don't get along, and and they don't speak the same language necessarily. So, that's, to me, that's my own challenge.
Yeah.
And I think it's relevant to anybody who is either looking for a job transition or going out there networking for the first time. You're very competent, but how do you convey that without sounding like a jerk, and also earning that right to be listened to right off the bat?
So let me restate the question for you just to make sure I'm hearing you correctly.
There.
Okay. So you want to know, how do you initiate the conversation with someone you don't know who's asked you what it is that you do, and you don't want to come across as being cocky or arrogant to turn them off?
Fair. Yeah, I think that's general enough. Yes.
Okay.
I think it's a general way of putting it. Yes.
Okay. All right. Again, I'm just going to go back to that unique professional value statement and just say, here's who I help, here's who I help. Right. And what I know is that when we lead with that, it softens the conversation. Right. As opposed to, I do this. Right. Which you don't know the other person on the other end. You don't know how they're going to receive it. You can't control how they're going to receive it, but you are in control of the tone that you're setting in the conversation. And what I know is that when we start off with something like I help, it softens it, right? To where they may go, okay, tell me a little bit more. Or they might say, oh, do you do this, right? All you're looking for is a way to come into the conversation that you're just going to be able to keep it going. I get a sense that once you kind of break that barrier, there's not a problem for you. You can just have that conversation and keep it going, right? The thing to avoid is getting in your head that what you are saying either A, sounds cocky, sounds arrogant, or is a huge turnoff for somebody. If you're thinking that, then don't say it. Right? I would just be really clear and work through that yourself in terms of what sounds right for me when I'm in that situation. Because if it doesn't, don't say it, because you're not going to feel right doing it.
I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I really
Thank you. That's a great question. Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And by the way, I once came in second on Wheel of Fortune.
Ah,
But I'm a
my
really
gosh.
bad bowler.
What's
that's a
that?
great way
But I'm
to
a really
start.
bad bowler.
Okay. When were you on Wheel?
2006, I lost to a biostatistician from the Mayo Clinic.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
felt at peace knowing that I basically got beat by Rain Woman. I mean, she was unbelievable.
Wow.
And we're still friends, by the way.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you.
I had to throw that in. Sorry.
I appreciate that.
Seconds.
Well, if we connect on LinkedIn, I'm probably going to ask you a Wheel question.
I've already sent you a request.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Leora, if it's okay with you, I've got a little gift for everyone, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So let me go back. I'm going to share my screen again. And Michael, you beat me to the punch here, right? Because, I had to put a picture of me from 2006 when I was on Chain Reaction.
Wow.
So that is a very younger looking me. I played with two of my friends. We did not win. But to your point, one of the people who beat us, she and I are actually really good Facebook friends. And so there's that. And that is me bowling a professional tournament I was invited to back in January out in Las Vegas. Last year, I was ranked 7th for the seniors in the PBA East region. And I had an opportunity to be out there with 120 people bowling an invitational tournament, which was a tremendous amount of fun. So that is my outlet. That is what I do. But I'm going to put this in the chat as well, but as my gift to you, if any of you would like to ask me any questions, further work through this, work your pitch one-on-one with me, that is the link, go.oneshub.com/John Nerrell. There is, there is a tab right up at the top that you can book a 15-minute get to know you call. I promise you, it is not a sales call. We're going to keep it to 15 minutes. It is just a chance for us to connect further. And we can absolutely, I'll answer any questions you want during that time. I will put that link in the chat in a moment. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I have a private Facebook group called Your Mid-Career GPS. It's a wonderful community of like-minded people who, like you, are all just trying to navigate their career transition. You are welcome to join that. I'm also the host of the Mid-Career GPS podcast. If you are a podcast listener, kindly put me in your ears. There's great tips in there about networking and interviewing, also hearing other people's stories about how they're transitioning. And I got a couple books available on Amazon as well. So let me put the schedule link in there into the chat for everybody. There is my website and my email. And I just want to thank you all so very, very much for letting me into your space and spending some time with you. I hope you got some value out of the conversation and it helps you. And the next time you connect and you utter the phrases with the words, I help, hope you think of me. So go out there and share your value with everybody. Thank you.